Hey, Chris, thanks for joining us. I'd like to start by talking about your new series, The Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse, which recently debuted on Disney Plus, and also happened to be Mickey's birthday, November 18th. So tell us about the music you scored in this new short form animated series.
Well, great to be here. Hi, Mike. Yeah, I'm so excited about this show. It's if anybody's familiar with the Mickey Mouse shorts, which was a series of 3.5-minute cartoons. The team of people is very much the same, and the humor is the same, and the style is the same in this new show as in the shorts. But the new show is 7-minute cartoons as opposed to 3.5-minute cartoons, and it's just amazing how the whole organism changes slightly when you double the length with those tiny kind of form factors. So it's the same world, but it's kind of been very, very different. It's kind of led to all sorts of different things. For instance, in the shorts, there were a lot of episodes set all around the world, and they would the characters would talk in the language of the country they were in, and I would have to do these deep dives into the music of whichever place, and really try and sort of obsess over the music of Bollywood or samba or something. With 7 minutes, we feel it's hard to sustain a story if you don't know what anyone's saying. So we're not doing those. But instead, there's a lot of kind of genre stuff you can do that was harder to do with 3 minutes. So we've kind of gone really, in fact, it's partly sort of a tie-in with Disneyland, kind of thinking about the bits of Disneyland, but there are these deep kind of genre dives. So there's a Western one, which sort of, if you look carefully, it's kind of set in the frontier land, in the bit of Disneyland that's kind of like a Western. And there's a horror one that's just absolutely, I'm amazed that they that they were able to get it made. And there are these other kind of genre ones. So I'm still doing these deep dives, but I'm doing them kind of more into genres. Quite a lot of swashbuckling, quite a lot. I've been listening to a lot of Korngold and kind of old Hollywood stuff.
And so it sounds like it allows you, just even by doubling the length, more time to establish the sound, the motive, the motif of whatever era you're in or area you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's one thing that's funny is we were all certain that I'd have more time to play a given, to stay in a given style before having to jump off, than when the overall thing was half as long. But actually, what's the strange thing is that the cadence of the cartoons, the humor is the same. So the kind of way that you set up a gag and pay off the gag is the same. And so actually the length, the amount of time that I have before a style kind of dissolves or takes a left turn is about the same, actually. It's just there's more bits.
Right.
So intellectually, it's got a lot more complicated, in that you kind of think, oh, do I really want the entire thing to be one melody, or shall I maybe kind of have a fundamental idea that then splits off into 2 or 3 melodies? And the other thing that happens is that although the bits are about the same length as they used to be, there'll be more of them. So I'll revisit, if Donald is on his own kind of adventure, I'll revisit kind of the music that he has.
Following him along.
I can have a lot of fun with that. Like, it sounds like maybe it's a sort of piece of Tchaikovsky or something, but it sounds like it's a later bit of that piece each time you hear it. The theme has changed, or it's very different, but not necessarily in all the ways that we all assumed it would be, like just everything is going to last twice as long.
Right. And, I think that leads into my next question. I mean, you've had such a string of success, earning all these awards with the previous shorter version of the Mickey Mouse series. So tying that into all your other projects, because I think it's important for viewers to know, you're also known for the award-winning series Veep, and even the critically acclaimed film, The Death of Stalin, which was very specific to an era and a style of music. How is working on this series, I guess, different from those other projects? I mean, it's such a different mindset, I would think, right?
Yeah, the thing I noticed most immediately, the thing that comes to mind straight away is that I never really feel like I'm creating gags like I'm generating laughs in Armando Iannucci's stuff, you know, Veep or The Death of Stalin. The Death of Stalin, I was almost like, I used to think about Young Frankenstein a lot, the score of Young Frankenstein, which is so incredibly straight, and the comedy kind of bounces off the score. The score has to be very rigid and the comedy kind of bounces off, which is very much what I sort of feel like I'm doing in The Death of Stalin. Like the more I stick to it, the more the comedy can bounce off. But I'm not sort of creating jokes that weren't already there or improving, you know, I'm not creating comedy. Whereas in Mickey Mouse, I feel this extraordinary sense of responsibility you have when you're doing a cartoon that abstract. You know, I go to all of the dub mixes, the final sound mixes, and we get very creative. You know, we'll take out all the sound except for the music in one bit. We might take out the music when we, you know, in a certain moment. But yeah, there are moments when I can actually make a bit funny that it was amusing before. It was sort of charming, but actually with the cadence of it and the way that I stop and start, I can actually really make a big difference to it. So my relationship with it and the process is surprisingly different and special to doing a little cartoon like a Mickey Mouse.
Wow. Well, you know, so it sounds like you're still keeping busy even during these pandemic times. Has that affected at all your work or changed the way you work?
We've been having to record the whole of this Mickey Mouse series remotely. We haven't been able to go into studios to record. We used to record a big band, or even sometimes we'd have the budget for a whole orchestra.
All together in the same room.
Yeah, that's right. There was always elements of piecing things together. Generally, we would do the rhythm section on their own, and very often the strings would be separate from the big band elements, and that would save lots of time. And so now we just had to really expand that process, and every single person records themselves. And there's not much to recommend it. Basically, it's not great, but the caliber of musicians that we have is such that they have been able to make it work. There's a video that Disney have released, actually, a featurette connected with the release of the show. It's on there's an interview with me on Collider.com. If you Google like Collider, Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse,
look it up for it. Yeah,
you'll see. We did one of those videos where you see everyone in the orchestra playing on their own. You see what we did with the choir, where we only have 4 singers, but we actually I got my piano here. We have them sing over and over. And
was that here in LA, or was that out of the country, or?
It's all SAG and AFM, and it's all done in LA, actually. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Maybe we talk just a little more briefly about like your regular collaborators, who's on your team. You know, it sounds like you go back to the same musicians who you've built relationships with and all that.
Yeah, I like doing that very much. I have certain people that I've really got to know well, particularly on Mickey Mouse over the years. And it's sort of, when you've asked people for very extreme things, and when we've had lots of experiences together before, and they've seen the kind of show that you're working on, you feel very safe, you know, asking for more strange things, and they kind of know where they can go. There's this sort of, what you never want in a cartoon is for anything to sort of sound inhibited or sort of moderate. You know, where you want violin solos to be full of vibrato and, you know, incredibly tragic. And you often want the trumpet playing to have scoops and chops and tons of vibrato. I work with Ed Tribeck as orchestrator. Yeah. I work with. Well, actually, he now works with the 3 of them: Jonathan Beard and Henry Wilkinson and Ed Tribeck. We now all know each other very well.
You know the language together.
Yeah. And Satoshi Noguchi mixes all of them, and he and I have such a shorthand now, you know, because I'm making him jump from one kind of sound to another. You know, one minute we want it to sound like Mancini in the 60s, and then we want suddenly to have a bit that sounds like it's the 1920s. And he's just incredible at making.
And that's the kind of thing, like when it's in the interest of time and you're in a time crunch, having that shorthand with all of your team players, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean the reality
Critical.
of TV is there's just no escaping that. You have to accept as you go into it that there's a limited amount of time. So we want them to be absolutely perfect and crystalline, but the reality is, I have like a certain number of days to write it, certain number of days to finesse it. We have 2 days to mix. We have a little window of time, a couple of days when all the musicians have to do their stuff. And then we're on to the next one and the next one and the next one.
And this whole series is being released full, like with, I think it's 20 episodes, right?
It's what they've decided to do is to make 2 seasons of 10 episodes.
Got it. Yeah, which
So
is, that's the common streaming platform.
right. So
doing it.
we made 20, well, I'm still going, but we made 20 all in one go. But actually, between now and Christmas, there'll be 10. So sort of a season one, I guess. And then
Sure.
next summer there'll be another season of them.
I'd love for the audience, it's always good to hear from the perspective of working composers who's, well in their path and plenty of success behind them and still going. What do you think are the most important traits to be a successful composer? And I'd say that wherever you live.
I think this is probably a little bit of a cliche that you hear a lot from composers, but the relationship that you have with the people that you work with the directors is probably more important than any kind of musical ability that you have. And I don't think that's not just agreeing with people all the time and being sort of matey. It's having a sort of a collaborative spirit, really being invested in films, which I think most of us are, and really being able to watch a film and listen to someone's thoughts about, say, something you've written, and just be able to turn on a dime. If you realize suddenly that what you wrote was wrong, you need to have no ego and throw it away. If you have a strong opinion, you need to be able to express it without pissing people off. People want to know what you think of what they did, and Hollywood is a very creative place, and people want to be making something great and working with people who'll be honest with them. So there's a certain vibe, I think, that you can bring to those relationships that is something people are going to want to. Oh, I really like this person, I want to work with them again.
Well, all that said, can you remember any mistakes you've learned from that you would never do again?
Something I used to do endlessly. This is not like I set fire to Steven Spielberg's trousers or something. This is more like just a bad habit I used to have. I used to not realize when I was trying to create things, when I was trying to write music, I didn't really realize the way my brain was working, and I used to throw so much away, and I used to not write things down. I would sort of noodle on the piano. My instrument is the piano, and I'd feel like I was looking for something and not finding it, and I'd throw ideas away, or I just forget them, hour after hour, and then get more and more and more exhausted and more frustrated. And what I didn't realize until later is that there were lots of good ideas coming out there. You need to sort of learn how to work with your brain, almost as though your brain is another person. Your brain is trying to give you stuff, loads and loads of stuff often, and you're not listening, and you're throwing it away. And so nowadays, I seem, compared with back then, I seem to come up with ideas miraculously quickly, tons and tons of stuff. And I'm really no different from the person I was before. It's just I used to ignore it. I used to sort of be very, very bad at interacting with my own brain. So that I think probably, yeah.
That sounds like an incredible discipline that should be a practice, in place early on as you build your career, because time is always the thing that works against you when you're dealing with that kind of maybe bad practice, right? Of not being able to accept. It's like committing to your decision, right? Basically come up with it, commit to it. And then if you really don't like it, scrap it and move on, but don't just discard it right away.
I don't know if it would be feasible to do this, but it's funny looking back that you don't learn more about sort of creativity and what it's like trying to be creative day after day when you're at school. I mean, like most of my, abilities in tonal music in traditional music, I probably learned while I was at college, pastiching composers and not doing parallel fifths and things. But everything I've learned about being creative and maximizing your own output in the way that I was just talking about, I've learned since starting to work. I didn't know anything about, I really didn't understand my own brain at all when I left college. And the importance of sleep and of pacing yourself. If you're stuck and you go to sleep, you wake up the next morning, you'll I think 100% certain to have a new perspective and to have moved on mentally from where you were before you went to sleep. Your brain will have done some work while you were sleeping.
And I would probably say trust your instincts too. With that, probably.
Yeah, actually, it's hard to put this more precisely, but you do sort of learn you have certain thoughts very early on in a process, and if you're not careful, you forget those, and they almost always have some value to them. You have some weird little thought that seems a bit childish and stupid, and you're in danger of throwing it away. But often, I think on David Copperfield, which is Armando Iannucci's new film that also came out this week. When I very first saw it, I had this sort of very, very vague impression of like string instruments sort of wafting over each other. And I didn't really think about it for months, but actually that is kind of what the large amounts of the final score are like. It's just, it was such a vague, amorphous idea at the start that I didn't really think that it.
Based on this simple little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, Chris, this is really great. Thanks so much for sharing this. I certainly encourage any viewers who are listening here to explore the wonderful world of Mickey Mouse, and all the shorts too, the earlier series, the shorter form ones where you've done such a wonderful job. And it's so refreshing how you nail the styles on the nose. So thank you again. This is great. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you.
Yeah,
All
you
right.
too.